Well, good morning, everybody. As we start off a new week, I want to show you here the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. One of the busiest corridors in the United States for not only heavy rain but severe weather has been this stretch here from Wyoming and Colorado through parts of the Central Plains all the way down into the southeast. Now, in that corridor alone, in the last week, we added 2,400 reports of severe weather. So that meant that what we had from the 1st to the 12th of June was only about 1,000 reports of severe weather. Here we are adding another 2,400. A lot of hail, straight line wind damage, and numerous tornadoes. But in addition to that, the flooding from these storms has been just terrible for crops in this area. And while this is an area that has been just under nonstop severe thunderstorms, the northern side of it, we have places throughout the Corn Belt that not only have not measured rainfall in the last week, but some places are approaching their 6th week with almost no rainfall. Now, there was a system over the weekend that curled out of Kansas into Missouri, delivering some rain in here in parts of southern Illinois, western Illinois, two places that desperately needed it. Some places in here, again, they were working on their 6th week without rainfall in parts of western Illinois. And this also delivered rain to northern Missouri. It got into Iowa, parts of southern Wisconsin, and into Minnesota as well. Now, this wasn't drought-breaking kind of rain, but it was moisture. It was moisture nonetheless. Now, we remember the big system that curled up over Michigan that went into parts of the Northeast, delivering desperately needed rain into this area. But we're going to take a look at this broader picture across the country in just a few moments to try to understand the significance of the haves and have-nots here in this pattern as of late. But as I've been doing the last few weeks, I want to lop off everything below ½ inch just so we can see the most significant rains, those rains that likely start to make an impact on crop production, because you can evaporate a ½ inch of rain pretty quickly when you have summer heat. So we're, again, just trying to get an idea here on the places that were the wettest by looking at this map. Now, the broader context of all of this has always been these. We keep coming back to these maps, these ranks maps, one of my favorite sets of maps. They come from Iowa State. And what they're showing here is from that time period when this pattern got stuck like this. So that was after the heavy rainfall of May 7th, 8th, and 9th. So starting on the 10th, going to June 18th, we can see here that we have districts in Colorado all the way down to Texas that are having, if not the wettest, then the top 5 wettest. The flooding here has been just epic. It has been very destructive to agriculture. Even though it broke them out of a drought, it did not do so gently. And then we just focus here on the Great Lakes Basin, the whole of it, the Mississippi Basin, the Ohio River Basin, into parts of New England, where we continue to see several climate reporting districts showing with their driest on the 131-year record. That's not to ignore what's going on here up in parts of coastal Oregon and Washington, but this is just kind of piecing together the whole structure of the precipitation patterns across the United States. And we knew that starting around June 10th, so that was a little more than a week ago, that this pattern was going to begin to evolve. It still had major missing pieces, specifically the subtropical high pressure systems that typically flank North America. And I've talked a lot about the missing piece, which is the Bermuda High, which is really what's starved a lot of this area from moisture. We've had a lot of easterly flow because of building high pressure across the Canadian prairie. So what has changed since then, we kind of talked about this all weekend, is this. A very deep trough of low pressure has kind of just found its way into the Pacific Northwest. And the ridge that had been over Texas has kind of expanded farther into parts of Mexico. And the piece in between this is just a part of the subtropical jet stream. There is a low that's going to cut itself off right here and just meander over parts of the Tennessee Valley into the southeast, which means parts of the Ohio Valley are going to get the northern edge of precipitation out of it. But there's this area right in through here, which I referred to last week as kind of a saddle point in the flow that's not getting the right flow to deliver any sort of mechanism, like a front or moisture transport or anything, just to get the atmosphere stirred up to make some precipitation. And while we're watching all of this, there are a couple of tropical systems to be monitoring, and we're just continuing to see the pattern evolve in a way that could start to return what we would call more typical summer flow to parts of the United States. So here's what we got in the near term. This morning's all hazards weather map around 6 o'clock this morning. We still have the excessive heat watches and warnings out for a large part of Texas getting into Louisiana. We're watching, again, ongoing storms. There's a tornado watch here, flood watch into this area, air quality issues throughout parts of the east in the central United States and in the west. This is a frost watch, and this is a freeze warning. So we have some very cold air and some stronger winds coming into the western part of the United States. Now, going forward into this week, today we're going to watch again for severe storms down here along the Gulf Coast into Florida and southern Georgia. So this will be the corridor that's going to be active, but storms are going to begin to fire here throughout the Pacific Northwest, getting here on this side of the Rocky Mountains into Montana and North Dakota as well. Going into tomorrow, there'll be a narrow area here in the Dakotas for severe weather, but more possible down here on the tail end of that frontal boundary. Remember, there's going to be a low sitting and spinning in this area right here down in parts of Louisiana and southern Mississippi. And then working our way out there to the 21st, this would be Wednesday, we're going to watch again the high plains, the western plains here for the risk of strong to severe storms. Our high resolution models, I'm going to go back to the one that shows you precipitation type and intensity versus just the radar simulation because we've got snow in this forecast. Very high elevation in the west, but there is snow. So beginning at 7 a.m., you're going to watch a couple things. Watch this low curl up. Watch precipitation kind of eject around this trough throughout the Pacific Northwest and then the severe storms setting up in parts of the Dakotas. So as we play forward through the day on Monday, this is getting into Monday evening, so that low didn't really move in position. It's sitting right here between Kentucky and Tennessee. But the deeper trough in the west, again, just delivering snow at very high elevation, but a lot of rain out ahead of it. So this is now into early Tuesday morning, playing through the middle of the day here on Tuesday, and working our way into Tuesday evening. So that's when we're going to keep a close eye on this corridor right in through here for strong to severe storms. Look at the scattered nature to the rainfall over parts of the southeast. I mean, this is a big area here underneath this upper level low. So we could be delivering rainfall, as far north as kind of this line right in through here, but a lot of scattered storms around this system. Now, parts of, the mid-Atlantic from Maryland to Virginia down to North Carolina, we desperately need this rainfall. I mean, if we just go back there and look, this has been a very, very dry spot as well. So to see that moisture coming around into this area is very good. Plus the temperatures are pulled back from this as well. I just played you out there till middle of the day on Wednesday, and you notice that low barely meandered, just maybe a couple hundred miles over the next 3 days. So when we stretch this out and say, tell me the next week, this is the latest from the WPC. So from parts of Nebraska through the Dakotas, very heavy rainfall. Coming around the base of this trough, we're going to see more precip coming into parts of Idaho and Wyoming and Montana. And then again, more rain in parts of Saskatchewan too, but Alberta and British Columbia. Notice the storms are expected to continue and extend into parts of Manitoba. There's some drier ground in this area that desperately needs to get this moisture. But because of the trajectory of that low coming around like this, we're going to watch very carefully the Appalachian Mountains on their east-facing slopes because we could pick up there in some locations 6 to 10 inches of rain out of this persistent flow being aided in its lift by the mountains here. So let's go look at this pattern and see if anything has shifted in a way that is going to be really significant. I'm focused a lot, again, on the depth of this trough coming into this area and the size of this ridge to its south, because we're not getting the help from a subtropical ridge here. So this is starting off here on Monday, going into Tuesday. So notice there's your cutoff low. There's the extent of the ridge that not only brings in the heat, but really just stops the ability for the atmosphere to be producing precipitation. And as we play beyond this, this is now the 23rd and 24th. So we're all the way out to next weekend. The critical piece will be to see how this ridge here and the trough that's out in this area interact to send a system this upcoming weekend into this area. Now, this is what's important and different about this. I'm not talking about seeing something coming out of here through the northern plains into the driest parts of the Midwest 10 days from now. It's now only 5 days away. And therefore, we have a better resolve of this, better confidence that it's not just out there in the models as something that the models keep reverting to that never shows up. So it appears that by next Sunday, there will be a trough of low pressure running around the top of this ridge. It is in both models, the GFS and the European. And as this slides through here, it's going to be bringing the first chances for precipitation to some of the driest parts of the Midwest here. And as we play out there beyond that, you see that trough deepens over the Ohio Valley. And this has been the most problematic piece to the pattern for this section of the Midwest, because without a subtropical ridge here to kick this thing out, we don't recover the heat. It sits there and spins. There's a lot of convergent and dry air on the backside of this. So this is a case where northwest flow does not build thunderstorms, and that appears to be the way that we see the end of this month taking shape. Now beyond that, the model just reverts to climatology. This is exactly what the flow pattern looks like normally when you get into the end of June. And I'm telling you that the model likely has so much spread in it that it's giving us this pattern. Now, if it did occur, and let's say that this isn't a reversion to climatology, but this is really what's going to happen with a ridge here and flow coming around the top, I would look at this pattern and go, man, it's going to storm like mad in this area to finish this month. But I've gotten to this thought process with the models right now that I need evidence that is not, I can't overturn, I don't know what you want to call this, but just I need proof that the model has actually honed in on a legitimate summer pattern before I make any sort of a call out there to the way the month of July is going to start. And I'm saying that specifically for the breakaway from the incredibly wet weather here and the drought that's to its north. Okay, so now that you've seen the pattern, let's go have a look at total precipitation. This is the European model first through Monday. This is now Tuesday, Wednesday, getting out there to Thursday and Friday. So what do we have this whole week? This upper level low sitting and spinning, incredibly heavy rain here. The deeper trough here, the ridge that's in place. So look at the storms firing in this area. Okay. Now we know that on Friday, we're going to watch, remember there's the ridge here. We're going to watch a system roll over the top and come into this direction. So from now till Friday, there's a lot of dry air in this whole area. Same thing down in the southwest. We go into Saturday. The model, do you see it trying to cascade storms around that? This is Saturday into Sunday. And that's going to be what we're going to have to watch carefully to see if we can truly bring in storms into this area. Now that's right at the very end of the critical time period I told us to watch, June 21 to 25th. And all week long we need to pay attention to this. Now from here, let me show you what the week 1 precipitation anomalies look like. So this is the difference from normal. You're just looking for the wet and dry areas. So until this all shows up, we're going to be waiting in this area for another week as heat builds into this region. Very wet here, very wet into this area. More storms up here where we had wildfires. Now, I also want to show you the model change map. So when you look at this, these colors say that the brand new run, the 0Z run we're using, was wetter than the 12Z run from Sunday. This would be where that pattern was drier. So it's even gone wetter in parts of Virginia and North Carolina. It's gone wetter into this corridor now that we're seeing that precip event. Again, this is next Sunday. And we're now a lot wetter here in parts of Montana going into North Dakota. All right. From there, what does the GFS say? So we're looking at for similar patterns. So I'm going to stop it on Friday. That looks pretty similar to what I showed you a moment ago. We're going to see if the storms cascade into this area over this weekend. So this is Saturday into Sunday and Monday. GFS has a different look at it. See how it's coming through Minnesota into Wisconsin, maybe less Iowa, Illinois. That's what we're going to be watching the difference for. Okay, from here, let's go look at some probability maps. This is the chance of getting an inch in the next 10 days. How about the dry places? This is the chance of staying less than half of an inch. So we're identifying this corridor. Now, folks down here, perfectly fine with it. Folks here, we need a whole lot more rain than what's shown here. So that's the chance of getting less than a half inch. But let's come back up. Here's an inch. Chance of getting more than an inch. 2 inches. That's like 100% chance in the models of getting more than 2 inches. 4 inches. And let's go up to 8. This is the spot we're watching this week for flooding. Very important to keep an eye on this. Week 2. The expansion of that ridge is trying to keep more of this region dry. The CPC, though, has got storms cascading over the top with wet weather east. That mimics what's going on here with the European model and the GFS. The GFS is always too dry in the southeast, so we're just going to kind of ignore this and keep a closer eye on what these two models are saying. And there's still dryness in the European model here over the state of Iowa, Illinois, Missouri. The GFS is trying to bring in better flow into this area into week 2, so is the CPC, but we just need to see what the models are showing. All right, now let's talk temperatures. Frost map. I thought I wasn't showing these anymore, but as I talked to you about this yesterday, the cold air that is in the western United States is not only at high elevation, but it's going to be hitting parts of Oregon and through here in Nevada. When we look back over the last 30 days, though, this is what the temperature pattern has looked like. So the heat has been north, the cool has been south. We've talked a lot about that. But I was just thinking a lot about this particular distribution of heat and where it's going to continue to look like this. Because when you compare that to normal in terms of GDD accumulation, so this is this year compared to the average of the last 20 years, we're way behind east, south, throughout the the Four Corners and down here into California. Now, we are already rebuilding a lot of heat into Texas and into New Mexico and into Arizona. But I just wanted to show you one other thing about this. I went over here to Raleigh, North Carolina, and I ran my custom GDD tool. Now, this is just based on corn. But if you planted corn in Raleigh on April 24th, that might be a bit late for some of the planting there, but that gets you outside of your historic frost dates. We are now outside of the distribution over the last 20 years in terms of the accumulation of GDDs, pushing this whole cycle pretty far back. And there are, of course, parts of the Carolinas that double crop. So the fact that it's been so cold has delayed a lot of things, I would imagine, and it's really kind of putting some strain on their crop calendar. So just something to be thinking about here. Meanwhile, we've had warmth in this area, and therefore we're ahead on GDDs. What are the temperatures doing? Well, it's very cold to start off Monday and Tuesday in the west. Temperatures struggling to get into the 60s. 110 down here in south central Texas, 90s throughout much of the Corn Belt, but where that upper level low sits and spins through Tuesday into Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to see cooler conditions here. So we're going to be putting some heat on the corn crop, the soybean crop that's grown into this area. We're approaching those temperatures that we start to see some stress, but the stress will be there because of how dry it's been. That's Thursday into Friday, getting into Saturday and next Sunday. Now remember, this is the time frame where we're going to start to watch this ridge send a system right in through here. That's going to be critical. If we look out there at the 15-day forecast for average temperature anomalies, I'm going to get you out there to day 5 through 10. That gets you to the 28th of June. And then you go out here on day 10 through 15. That gets you to the 4th of July. And that's what the temperatures are looking like through that time frame according to the European model. Last couple things to talk about. This is this morning as the sun was rising across the Atlantic. We pointed this out last week. No Saharan dust. But there are two tropical disturbances, one here and here, that we're keeping a very close eye on. The latest update from the National Hurricane Center has got 90% chance for the lead wave, 30% chance for the second wave, and the forecast is looking something like this. Now we're getting some better information. The lead wave likely going over the Lesser Antilles and into the Caribbean, where a lot of storm systems go to die this time of year because of wind shear. We will watch that carefully. The system behind it's going to try to curl up around weaker than normal high pressure in the North Atlantic and get pulled this way. Now, should this system survive and it gets here into the Caribbean, we would of course watch for it to make its way into the Gulf. But it's hard to do that without a big high pressure cell here. So we're going to have to just monitor, keep an eye on that system to the south, because many of us want this to skip over the south and get into the Midwest and deliver rain. I can't make the atmosphere do that. Of course, it will deliver flooding rain into here first if it forms and gets there. But the big problem with this entire pattern is what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm very much looking forward to giving you my in-depth report tonight, because we're not only going to discuss the failure points of this forecast for this lead part of the growing season here, but we just got to come back to the big missing pieces. And this is it. This is what's so different about this year. This is anomalously low pressure. It's supposed to be high, anomalously low pressure in this region, which has kind of shunted the flow, preventing the Pacific from doing its job to get stuff to fire across the United States. And we're missing the moisture pump out of this. It's keeping it cool over the east. And we're just going to talk more about the components of this pattern that are driving things and when they could possibly change. Okay, we'll talk again soon. Thanks.